Hey guys, it's Ryan here with HobbiesofaMan once again, and today we're going to be doing our best manga of 2023 video. It's going to be a top 10, and I'm actually going to run through these faster than I usually do. I don't want to make this a 40-minute video. I want to make this like at least, or at most, like 15 to 20 minutes, right? So I'm going to go through this list relatively fast, and I'm not going to really bother with too much explanation about these stories because most of these have reviews on the channel already. However, I will mention why I kind of like picked some of them over others. And why my rating is the way it is, right? But let's get into it. So number 10, the bottom of the list here, is Kamen Rider. Now, it's that Kamen Rider right there. It's a Classic Collections book, and it is because, I think it's because I read this book immediately before watching Shin Kamen Rider, and so my feelings for Shin Kamen Rider and my feelings for Kamen Rider, the book, kind of melded and commingled in my mind, and so when I think of Kamen Rider, I think of Shin Kamen Rider. And I actually really enjoyed the story. I thought that it was pretty cool and interesting. It is a very nice kind of take on the superhero type character. And it worked pretty well. It worked better than most other kind of old school classic manga that really just kind of go nowhere. This one also still goes nowhere, but at least it has a passing of the torch and also a conclusion, like a riding into the sunset kind of moment at the end of the story, which to me worked pretty well. There's also a lot of elements to the Kamen Rider manga that I liked. I really enjoyed the aspect of begging for the world to give him power, you know, asking for the wind to howl in his veins to give him the power to do things. I really found that to be enjoyable. The Shocker organization, or whatever they're called, the evil organization that turns him into Kamen Rider, was interesting and enjoyable. They remind me of Cobra, like the G.I. Joe villains, and also of Hydra, and I like that. I think it's enjoyable. I think it's nice to have this like morally non-ambiguous, like morally clearly bad, or like clearly morally bad group of people that are just the villains, and your whole job is to just get rid of the villains, right? So I like the simplicity of it quite a bit. So Kamen Rider is number 10 on the list. Now, number 9 is Yomeuchi, Dreaming for You, I think is what it's called. And this is one that I didn't really read too much of, but the 10 to 15 chapters I did read were phenomenal. I really enjoyed them. So this is a redo story, like a reincarnation. I guess it's not reincarnation. It's rather a redo in the sense that the main character goes to sleep, and when he's asleep, he's actually reliving his younger self's life. And there was kind of like a complex paradox issue that comes up, but or like that I thought about, but it doesn't really come up in the manga, at least not the bits that I read. And it turns out that a female person, another girl that he knew from school, is also experiencing the same phenomenon. And so without either of them knowing, they're actually trying to change their lives for the better, and that includes interacting with each other. And this character kind of finds more and more of these female classmates of his that have this kind of same phenomenon occurring to them. And this actually ends up kind of being like a slight harem anime kind of situation where this main guy happens to connect with a bunch of female characters. And it looks like, at least the part that I read, it looked like these female characters were going to eventually start fighting over him, or kind of developing a rapport with each other that might have been antagonistic. And so the concept, or the kind of phenomenon in this story, was actually the thing that I most enjoyed. And the way that this kind of power fantasy of having like a harem was also compounded with this power fantasy that is much more broad and it appeals to all genders, which is, what if I could redo my life and make changes for the better, right? And how could I see them affecting me in real time? So I really enjoyed this combination of things, and I really enjoyed the artwork as well. So that's why Yomeuchi, Dreaming for You, is number 9. In terms of number 8, it's Dragon Maid, you know, Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, but it's only the chromatic edition because I've not actually read any other Dragon Maid books this year. So the chromatic edition makes it on this list because I find the edition to be phenomenal. There's only one issue with it, which is a very tight spine, but otherwise it is very, very good. I like it. I really enjoy the colors. They're not really overtly strong, and the paper quality is very good, even though it's not like comic book glossy paper. And I actually like that it's not comic book glossy paper. It almost feels like watercolor paper, and I like that. And I really like the pastelness of the colors. And I also really think that the selection was quite good. Now, I did complain initially about the selection being not my favorite because it doesn't actually have each of the chapters that introduce the dragons. It only has some of them. But the more I think about it, the more that I understand why they chose not to do that, because they would basically be wasting a whole volume, right? Like, most people that are going to be buying this edition are not necessarily new readers. They're going to be readers that are already aware of the story. And so there's no point in reintroducing these characters because that's not really the target audience for this book, right? However, touching on some of the key aspects of these characters is much more important, because these people are interested in the story because of these characters, right? And so I understand why they chose the chapters that they chose, but I really would have still liked to have seen some of the introductions in color, right? But it is what it is. I understand. And overall, I really enjoy the story. I enjoy the style of the story, even though it's a lot hornier in the manga than it is in the anime, which is kind of rare. It's actually usually the other way around, but the anime happens to be very wholesome feeling, at least, right? And so chromatic edition of Dragon Maid is number 8, because I love the story and I love the colors that they use, right? So yeah, number 7 is Green Blood. Now, I didn't really get to read much of Green Blood, but I really enjoyed this for the artwork. I don't really care too much about the story. I do want to finish collecting it. However, I'm not going to be able to collect it in the Spanish editions that I got initially. I'm going to have to buy the Mexican editions, which is actually better for me because they're cheaper. They're easier to get, even though they take longer to get, because I can only get them at certain times of the year. And honestly, those times might be reducing to once every couple of years, since the kind of social and political situation in Mexico is pretty hard right now. And so it's hard to travel to Mexico without kind of facing a lot of dangers, right? So Green Blood is about these two siblings. One of them is a kind of Ripper character, a Jack the Ripper type character, or maybe not even Jack the Ripper, more of a enforcer for a mafia type character. He's kind of an undertaker, I guess is the right word. And his brother is kind of a naive boy. And so this guy happens to do these dark deeds in order to protect his brother's innocence. However, something happens and they have to go off into the West. And so it is a Western story, but I haven't really gotten to that point of the story yet. So honestly, I'm just here for the Masasumi Kakisaki artwork because he's so good. Number 6 is Suara's Monster House by Yamaji Hidenori, and I love the artwork here a lot, but I also really enjoy the concept here, which is everyone, even monsters, want a home. And so in a world where war was basically everything that was ever known, and that has finally achieved peace through basically a battle of attrition where no one wants to fight anymore, monsters deserve homes too. And so a few, brave dwarves head out to try to provide homes for monsters. And Suara, a recent graduate from the Military Academy of the Humans, happens to end up joining them after she's basically kicked out of her country when the war is over and they no longer need her, right? And so she joins them, and we get these beautiful moments of found family and these beautiful moments of catering to the desire for a home for everyone, right? And I really liked it. I thought it was great. I love the artwork. I think it's phenomenal. And something about the way Yamaji Hidenori writes just kind of pulls my heartstrings a lot. I really enjoy his other series, or their other series. I don't know if they're male or female. And their other series is called Berry Grave. I really love that story. And so I wanted to also, demonstrate Sora's Monster House. So that's why it's number 6. Number 5 is Mashal, mostly because I was kind of running out of options. I really didn't read as much manga as I really wanted to this year. I kind of basically had the whole year kind of in this weird slump state where I wasn't really slumping. I wasn't really not reading, but I also wasn't really as invested in reading as I really would have liked to be, at least not manga. And so it was kind of difficult for me to really read a lot of books, but I did manage to read enough to make a list, but also not enough to make the list all that interesting and varied, right? But, that's up to you to decide. Let me know if you guys think my list is varied yet. So, number 5 is Mashal. I just really enjoy the story because it is very simple, but still very effective and very fun. I don't really love the gags, the comedy bits of the story, but I really enjoy the fights and the world building and the kind of like just ridiculous nature of this guy that's just like, oh, I can't beat you, let me just do some push-ups, and then with my pump I'll punch the shit out of you. Like it's just so stupid and ridiculous, and it works so well, and I really enjoy it. So there you go, that's number 5 on the list, Mashal. Number 4 is Fake Red. This is a Spider-Man story, and it's actually maybe the best Spider-Man story I've ever, experienced. That's not necessarily true. I do think that I like Spider-Man, like Amazing Spider-Man, better. And I know that Spider-Man 2 is supposed to be the greatest Spider-Man movie ever, although I've never really thought that myself, but that's because I don't think I really appreciate that movie. At least I didn't when I watched it, the first few times. And I haven't really watched it in many, many years, right? So I might think that Spider-Man 2 is the best Spider-Man movie ever, but I just haven't gotten around to watching it enough to really get to that point, right? But Spider-Man Fake Red is a story about a boy who happens to take on the mantle of Spider-Man for a brief moment in time when Spider-Man is fighting off his demons, literal and metaphysical, in the form of Venom, right? And so this boy takes the identity. He tries to do his best without powers, and he ultimately kind of fails, but he inspires Spider-Man enough to help him break out of his fight with Venom. And so this, in turns, makes the idea that anyone can be a hero a very viable one, right? And also the idea that, with great power comes great responsibility, and the way that you get your power can be as ridiculous and maybe even as stupid as accidentally wearing your superhero's costume, right? And so I really enjoyed this. Something about the story really spoke to me. The artwork could have been better, but it wasn't so bad that it was distracting. It was just the right amount of weird to keep me interested. And also the story was just very well written. So I really enjoyed this one. Number 3 is Chain Soldier, solely for the fact that this is an absurd, ecchi series, and somehow it manages to also be very interesting. Usually, when you get to kind of 5 volumes of an ecchi series, you kind of get bored because it's the same stuff over and over again. And at this point, yeah, we have a lot of repetition in terms of what the fancy fan servicey bits that we're getting are. However, because the story is also actually trying to, be interesting and have cool fights and have cool world building, you don't get bored because the story just happens to work really, really well. I also really enjoy the author's notes that we get in Chain Soldier because they show you a little bit of what the author was trying to accomplish with his chapters, and that actually gives me a lot more appreciation for what he does, and also it helps me understand the context in which through which I'm supposed to be looking at these chapters. And so the kind of added context, plus the fact that there's more to this than fan service, plus the fact that the fan service is actually really, really good, and the artwork is also really enjoyable as well, makes this story a phenomenal, story to read, right? And it is why it manages to make it into the top 3 of this list, right? So, yeah, we're kind of getting to the end game here. Number 2 is Blue Lock, just because I love Blue Lock. I think it's great. It is one of the craziest, most edgy series I've ever read, but it manages to be edgy while also maintaining itself in like this level of equilibrium where it's just really, really enjoyable, which is something that I don't find a lot of edgy, not etchy, EDGY, manga don't manage to do, right? So Blue Lock manages to ride that fine line so well, in such a way that it makes me very happy to read this, right? So I read this early on in the year, and honestly, I have not touched a volume of Blue Lock in many, many months. However, I still remember the story quite vividly, and I can't wait for the next year when I'm finally going to be able to experience new Blue Lock volumes, right? So, overall, Blue Lock, solid read. Number 2 on the list, and number 1 is Fire Force, simply because it is the best manga that I read this year. Like, there is really nothing else to it. It is phenomenal. The artwork is awesome. The storytelling is great. The way it links into other things by this author is good as well. Just everything about it is phenomenal, except for some of the fan service. And mostly, it's not even the fan service that's an issue. It's the way that people react to this fan service that bothers me, right? But that is not really here or there. If you like, Soul Eater, and if you like, fire, if you think fire is cool, and you want to see a magic system where it's all based on fire, and yet somehow it is all very diverse, you should read Fire Force because it's great. And the characters are awesome. I really enjoy so many of them because they're all very complex and very interesting without being kind of archetypes. Or they manage to play with the archetypes that they're representing without being only that. And I really like that. I think it's great. So, yeah, overall, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what your top 10 manga for the year were. And thank you guys very much for watching, like I said, once more. And see you guys later. Happy holidays.